Change is not an accident, it is a divine appointment. When God is about to shift your life, He doesn't just do it, He prepares you for it. And that preparation comes through signs, warnings, and divine positioning. The first sign is discomfort. God will disturb your comfort zone because your next level requires a new mindset. If you feel restless, unfulfilled, or like something is missing, it's not a problem, it's a sign. The second sign is closed doors. When God is shifting you, He will start shutting down opportunities that no longer serve your purpose. What you see as rejection is often redirection. God never closes a door without opening a greater one. The third sign is divine connections. God will begin to align you with people who challenge your thinking, stretch your faith, and push you beyond what you thought possible. Finally, there will be a deep inner stirring and unshakable conviction that something greater is coming. Your spirit knows before your mind does. That is God calling you to trust Him, to walk by faith and not by sight. The question is, will you recognize the signs? Will you embrace the shift? Because when God is about to change your life, you must be ready to move. Discomfort is not a sign of failure. It is often the first indication that God is preparing you for something greater. When you begin to feel uneasy where you are, it is not because you are lost, but because you are being transitioned. God never calls people into something new while allowing them to remain comfortable in the old. The process of divine transformation always begins with discomfort. Throughout the Bible, whenever God was about to move someone to a higher level, He first made their current situation unbearable. When the Israelites were in Egypt, they had grown accustomed to slavery. It was their normal, their comfort zone, even in bondage. But before their deliverance, their suffering increased. Pharaoh made their labor more difficult, and their cries grew louder. God allowed this because He was preparing them for freedom. Had they remained comfortable in Egypt, they would never have longed for the promised land. Discomfort pushes you to seek change. It forces you to reevaluate your situation and recognize that where you are is not where you are meant to be. If everything remained easy, you would never desire to grow. God places discomfort in your heart so that you do not settle for less than what He has designed for you. Many people ignore this feeling, mistaking it for frustration or impatience. But in reality, it is God's way of saying, I have more for you. Abraham experienced divine discomfort when God told him to leave his father's house and go to a land he had never seen. Imagine living in a familiar place, surrounded by family, stability, and security, only to be told to walk away from it all without a clear destination. That kind of uncertainty is uncomfortable. But God does not give details, He gives directions. And those who are willing to move despite the discomfort are the ones who step into divine destiny. In your own life, you may find yourself in a job that no longer fulfills you, a relationship that no longer aligns with your values, or a routine that no longer challenges you. You may feel an internal restlessness and uneasiness that you cannot shake. That is not an accident, it is a sign. When God is preparing you for elevation, He will remove your peace from the place that no longer serves you. Moses grew up in Pharaoh's palace, a life of luxury, power, and privilege, yet he felt something was off. Despite having everything that others envied, there was an internal discomfort, a feeling that he did not belong. It was that discomfort that pushed him to step into his true calling. Had he ignored it, he would have remained in the palace living beneath his purpose. God uses discomfort to detach you from places, people, and positions that are not meant for your future. Sometimes what once brought you joy suddenly feels empty. The conversations that once excited you now feel draining. The environment that once felt like home now feels foreign. You try to force yourself to be satisfied, but deep down, you know you are outgrowing your current season. That is God stirring you, pushing you toward the next level. One of the biggest mistakes people make is resisting the discomfort. Instead of recognizing it as a divine signal, they fight to stay where they are. They pray for the feeling to go away instead of asking God what He is trying to reveal. When you resist the process, you delay your progress. Jonah ran from God's calling and found himself in the belly of a great fish, surrounded by darkness and uncertainty. That discomfort was not a punishment, it was a redirection. God was shifting him back to where he was meant to be. Growth is never comfortable. A seed must break through the ground before it becomes a tree. A butterfly must struggle out of the cocoon before it can fly. Likewise, you must endure discomfort before you can step into your full potential. What you are experiencing right now is not meant to destroy you, it is meant to develop you. God will not allow you to stay where you are when He has more for you. The challenge is whether you will recognize the discomfort as a divine signal or mistake it for a problem. Many people pray for promotion but resist the discomfort that comes before it. They ask for greater opportunities but refuse to leave behind what is familiar. But faith requires movement. If God is making your current situation uncomfortable, it is because He is calling you higher. Closed doors are not a sign of rejection, but a clear indication of divine redirection. When God is leading you into a new season, He will often begin by shutting down opportunities that no longer align with His plan for your life. It can be painful, frustrating, and confusing, especially when you have invested time, energy, and hope into something, only to see it slip away. But God never removes something without the purpose of replacing it with something greater. What feels like loss is often preparation for a divine shift. Throughout Scripture, we see examples of how God uses closed doors to realign people with His will. Paul, a man deeply committed to spreading the gospel, experienced this firsthand. In Acts 16, he and his companions tried to enter Asia to preach, but the Holy Spirit prevented them. Then they attempted to go into Bithynia, but again the Spirit blocked them. To the natural mind, it would seem like failure, as if they were being stopped from fulfilling God's work. But in reality, these closed doors were leading them to Macedonia, where God had ordained a greater impact. Had they forced their way into Asia, they would have missed the divine assignment waiting for them elsewhere. Many times, when doors close in our lives, we assume it is because we did something wrong. We question ourselves, wondering if we made a mistake, lacked faith, or missed an opportunity. But when God is orchestrating your steps, He will ensure that no door that leads you away from your purpose remains open. What you call rejection is God's protection. What you see as an obstacle is often an answer to a prayer you didn't even know you needed to pray. Imagine Joseph in prison, locked away after being falsely accused. To the natural eye, the prison door was a symbol of failure. He could have easily believed that his dreams were over, but that closed door was a divine setup. It was in that place of limitation that God positioned him for elevation. Had Joseph been released at the wrong time, he might have gone back to his old life. Instead, at the right moment, God opened the door that led him directly to the palace. When a door closes, it often means that what is behind it is not meant for your future. You may have prayed for a certain job only to receive a rejection letter. You may have wanted a particular relationship to work out, but it ended unexpectedly. You may have been excited about an opportunity that suddenly fell apart. But if you truly believe that God orders your steps, then you must also trust that He orders your stops. Every door that closes is a message from heaven that God has something better. It is human nature to try and force doors open. We knock harder, push stronger, and refuse to let go. We cling to what we think is best, even when God is clearly redirecting us. But anything that requires force to remain in your life is not a blessing, it is bondage. When God shuts a door, it is because He is moving you forward. Holding on to something that God has removed will only delay what He is trying to do next. Peter, one of Jesus' closest disciples, struggled with this lesson. When Jesus told His disciples that He would have to suffer and die, Peter refusing to accept that the plan involved pain. But Jesus corrected him, making it clear that divine purpose is not always comfortable or predictable. Sometimes the very thing we are trying to hold on to is the thing God is trying to remove in order to elevate us. There are moments in life when God will allow things to fall apart so that something greater can be built. The job you lost, the relationship that ended, the opportunity that disappeared, these are not accidents. They are divine interventions. But if you spend too much time looking at the closed door, you will miss the new one that God is opening. Just as a shepherd leads his sheep through different pastures, God leads you through different seasons, and each one requires letting go of the last. The challenge is whether you will recognize the closed door as part of God's process or resist it out of fear. Many people pray for God's will but resist His ways. They ask for new opportunities but refuse to release the old ones. But when you truly surrender to God, you begin to see closed doors not as obstacles, but as signs that He is moving you towards something greater. New connections are one of the clearest signs that God is shifting you into a new season. When He is preparing to elevate you, He will begin to place the right people in your life, people who challenge you, stretch your faith, and push you beyond your comfort zone. Divine connections are never accidental. They are orchestrated by God to align you with His purpose. In the Bible, every major transition in a person's life involved a key relationship. When God was ready to move Moses into his destiny, He connected him with Jethro, a wise mentor who provided him with counsel and structure. When David was being positioned for kingship, God brought Jonathan into his life, a divine friendship that provided support and encouragement. When Jesus was preparing for His ministry, He gathered 12 disciples, not just followers, but individuals strategically placed to be part of His mission. Whenever God is about to shift you, He will bring people who carry wisdom, insight, and knowledge that you need for the next level. These connections are not always obvious, and they do not always look the way you expect. Sometimes they come in the form of mentors who challenge your way of thinking. Other times they come as friends who support you in moments of uncertainty. In some cases, they come as divine appointments, brief encounters with people who speak a word into your life that shifts your entire perspective. One of the mistakes people make is holding on to old connections when God is introducing new ones. Not everyone in your current circle is meant to walk with you into your next season. Some relationships were only meant for a specific time in your life. When God begins to move you forward, He will separate you from those who no longer align with your purpose. This is not rejection. It is divine pruning. Holding on to relationships that no longer serve your growth can hinder the new connections God is trying to bring. Elisha's life changed the moment he encountered Elijah. Before that meeting, he was simply a farmer, plowing his fields, doing what he had always done. But when Elijah placed his mantle on Elisha, everything shifted. That connection activated his purpose. It required him to leave behind what was familiar and step into a divine calling. If he had ignored that connection or held on to his old life, he would have missed the great assignment that God had for him. Not every connection is meant to last forever, but every divine connection serves a purpose. Some people come into your life to teach you a lesson. Some come to open a door. Some come to challenge your thinking. And some come to walk with you into destiny. The key is recognizing who is sent by God and who is a distraction. Not everyone who enters your life is assigned to your journey. Some people are sent to delay you, while others are sent to propel you forward. Jesus understood the importance of discernment in relationships. He had many followers, but He did not entrust Himself to everyone. He had 12 disciples, but among them, He had an inner circle, Peter, James, and John, who witnessed moments others did not. And even among those, He knew that Judas, though necessary for the process, was not truly for Him. Understanding who is meant to walk with you and who is only present for a season is crucial for spiritual growth. God will often use new connections to expose you to new levels of thinking. If you want to step into a greater calling, you cannot remain surrounded by people who think small. Divine connections will challenge your mindset, push you beyond limitations, and encourage you to step out in faith. These connections are often uncomfortable at first because they require growth. They force you to let go of old habits, outdated perspectives, and limited thinking. Sometimes divine connections come in unexpected ways. A conversation with a stranger may open a door you never anticipated. A mentor may come into your life at just the right time, providing the wisdom you need to move forward. A friend may challenge you to think differently, leading you to opportunities you would have otherwise missed. God orchestrates these relationships with precision, knowing exactly who and what you need at every stage of your journey. Recognizing these connections requires spiritual sensitivity. If you are too focused on the past, you will miss the new people God is placing in your life. If you are unwilling to step out of your comfort zone, you may reject the very people sent to bless you. Divine connections are not always convenient, but they are always necessary. Inner restlessness is one of the strongest indicators that God is shifting you into a new season. It is not an ordinary feeling of impatience or boredom. It is a deep stirring in your spirit, a sense that where you are is no longer where you are meant to be. This restlessness is God's way of preparing you for transition. Before He moves you physically, He will move you internally. Before He shifts your situation, He will shift your mindset. Many people ignore this feeling, dismissing it as frustration or dissatisfaction. But spiritual restlessness is different. It is not caused by external circumstances. It is a divine prompting. It does not come from a lack of contentment, but from an awareness that there is something more. It is the same feeling Abraham must have had when God told him to leave his father's house. He did not know exactly where he was going, but he knew he could not stay where he was. God often uses inner restlessness to push you out of your comfort zone. When you have outgrown a season but refuse to move, He will allow discomfort to rise within you. The things that once satisfied you will no longer bring joy. The conversations that once excited you will feel empty. The places that once felt like home will start to feel foreign. This is God's way of telling you that your time in that place is over. Moses experienced this kind of restlessness while living in Pharaoh's palace. He had everything: wealth, power, influence, but something inside him would not let him be at peace. He could have ignored it and continued living in comfort, but he knew he was called to something greater. That internal stirring led him to step into his true purpose. Many people miss their calling because they suppress the feeling that tells them they are meant for more. They settle for comfort instead of stepping into their destiny. Restlessness often comes before major breakthroughs. Before David became king, he experienced a season of wandering, constantly on the move, never able to settle. He had been anointed, but he was not yet appointed. He knew he was called to more, but he was not there yet. That in-between stage can be the most frustrating, because you can sense that something is coming, but you do not know when. The challenge is to trust God even when the next step is unclear. God will not allow you to be at peace in a place that no longer serves your purpose. When He is preparing you for something greater, He will create a divine discontentment. This does not mean you are ungrateful for where you are. It simply means you recognize that you cannot stay there forever. What was once a blessing can become a burden if you remain in it past its season. Israel is meant to pass through the wilderness, not settle there. Some people prolong their struggles because they resist the inner prompting to move forward. One of the greatest dangers of ignoring spiritual restlessness is that it can turn into frustration. When you feel the pull of destiny but refuse to act on it, you will start to resent your current situation. You will feel stuck, unfulfilled, and out of place. This is not because God has abandoned you, but because you are refusing to follow His lead. He is trying to move you, but you are holding on to what is familiar. Some people mistake this restlessness as a sign to give up, when in reality it is a sign to press in. It is not always about leaving a physical place. Sometimes it is about shifting your mindset. God may be calling you to a higher level of thinking, a deeper level of faith, or a new level of obedience. If you ignore the stirring, you risk becoming stagnant. Spiritual restlessness is an invitation to seek God more deeply. It is a call to prayer, to fasting, to surrendering your own plans for His. When you feel this stirring, do not run from it. Ask God what He is trying to reveal. Seek His guidance, because He does not stir your spirit without purpose. That uneasy feeling is not there to frustrate you. It is there to prepare you. Unexpected challenges are often a sign that God is preparing you for something greater. When you are on the verge of a breakthrough, adversity increases. Difficulties do not always mean you are on the wrong path. In fact, they often indicate that you are exactly where you need to be. God uses challenges to refine your character, strengthen your faith, and prepare you for the next level. Throughout Scripture, every great leader went through intense trials before stepping into their calling. Joseph had to endure betrayal, slavery, and imprisonment before he reached the palace. Moses faced rejection and isolation before he was called to lead Israel. David was hunted by Saul for years before he became king. These challenges were not random. They were part of the process. Without the trials, they would not have been ready for the position God had for them. God allows challenges because He is more concerned with your development than your comfort. Many people pray for promotion but resist the process that prepares them for it. They want the blessing without the breaking. But God does not elevate those who are not prepared to handle the weight of the responsibility. Challenges refine your character, expose weaknesses, and teach you dependence on God. One of the biggest mistakes people make is assuming that challenges mean they are outside of God's will. When things get difficult, they begin to doubt, question, and sometimes even turn back. But challenges do not mean God has abandoned you, they mean He is preparing you. The greater the calling, the greater the opposition. If you are facing unusual pressure, unexpected obstacle, or increased distance, it is not a sign that something greater is on the other side. Job's story is a perfect example of how challenges refine faith. He lost everything: his wealth, his health, his family. But through it all, he remained faithful. The enemy thought the trials would break him, but instead they positioned him for double restoration. Many times the enemy attacks because he sees what is coming. He knows that if you endure, you will step into a level of blessing that he cannot stop. His goal is to discourage you before you get there. Challenges also serve to remove distractions and realign your focus. When things are easy, it is natural to become comfortable. You may even start relying on your own strength rather than depending on God. But when you face trials, you are forced to seek Him in a deeper way. You begin to pray more, worship more, and lean on His wisdom rather than your own. This is why some of the greatest spiritual growth happens in seasons of difficulty. God will often use challenges to test your obedience. When the Israelites were in the wilderness, they faced many difficulties: lack of water, hunger, enemies attacking them. But each challenge was an opportunity to trust God. Some of them passed the test, while others complained and turned away. Those who endured saw the promised land, while those who doubted remained stuck. Your response to challenges determines whether you move forward or remain in the same place. Jesus Himself faced intense opposition before stepping into His greatest assignment. Before His ministry began, He was led into the wilderness for 40 days of testing. Before His crucifixion, He endured betrayal, false accusations, and suffering. The process was painful, but the outcome was victory. If Jesus had to go through challenges to fulfill His purpose, why would it be any different for you? Sometimes, challenges reveal who is truly for you and who is not. When everything is going well, people will celebrate you. But when you go through trials, you will see who remains. Challenges expose motives, test loyalty, and separate those who are meant to walk with you from those who are only there for the benefits. This is why difficult seasons are often accompanied by shifts in relationships. In every challenge, there is a lesson. If you only focus on the pain, you will miss the purpose. God does not waste struggles. Every trial is meant to teach, shape, and prepare you. What feels like opposition is often preparation. What seems like a setback is actually positioning you for something greater. The question is not whether challenges will come, the question is how you will respond when they do. Deepened spiritual sensitivity is a clear sign that God is preparing to shift your life. When He is about to move you into a new season, He sharpens your ability to discern His voice, recognize His presence, and perceive things beyond the natural. Your awareness of Him becomes more intense, your hunger for His presence grows stronger, and your ability to sense what He is doing increases. This is not something you can force, it is something He initiates. One of the first signs of deepened spiritual sensitivity is an increased awareness of God's voice. You may find that scriptures speak to you in ways they never have before. A verse you have read many times suddenly carries a new depth of meaning. Messages you hear begin to confirm things God has already placed in your heart. You become more aware of divine direction, sensing when to move and when to wait. This heightened awareness is not a coincidence, it is a sign that God is preparing you for something new. Samuel experienced this when God first called him. As a young boy, he did not recognize the voice of God. He heard it, but he did not understand it. It took time for him to develop the sensitivity to respond. Many people miss what God is saying because they are not tuned in. But when He is preparing you, He makes His voice clearer. He removes distractions, quiets unnecessary noise, and positions you to hear Him with greater clarity. Another sign of increased sensitivity is a stronger conviction about what is right and wrong. Things you once tolerated become uncomfortable. Conversations you used to enjoy no longer feel right. Activities that were once normal begin to feel out of place. This is not because you are becoming overly sensitive, it is because the Holy Spirit is refining you. When God is shifting you, He increases your awareness of what aligns with His will and what does not. Isaiah had a similar experience when he encountered the presence of God. In that moment, he became deeply aware of his own shortcomings. The closer you get to God, the more you recognize the areas that need to change. This is not to condemn you, but to prepare you. God cannot take you higher if you are still attached to things that hold you back. Increased spiritual sensitivity often comes with a refining process. Another sign of this sensitivity is a greater burden for prayer. When God is moving, He stirs a hunger in your spirit. You may feel drawn to spend more time with Him, not out of obligation, but out of desire. You may wake up in the middle of the night feeling the need to pray. Your heart becomes more attuned to His presence, and you find yourself seeking Him more than before. This is not random, it is preparation. Jesus often withdrew to pray before major moments in His ministry. Before choosing His disciples, before performing miracles, before going to the cross, He spent time in prayer. Why? Because prayer sharpens spiritual awareness. When God is about to elevate you, He calls you into deeper communion with Him. The more time you spend with Him, the clearer His direction becomes. Another indication of spiritual sensitivity is an increased awareness of the spiritual realm. You may notice things more clearly, patterns in your life, repeated signs, confirmations through people or circumstances. You may become more aware of spiritual attacks, recognizing when the enemy is trying to distract or discourage you. This is not meant to create fear, but to equip you. God sharpens your discernment so that you can navigate challenges with wisdom. Joseph experienced this when interpreting dreams. He was able to perceive what others could not because God had increased his sensitivity. This ability to recognize divine patterns is critical when stepping into a new season. If you cannot discern what God is doing, you may misinterpret the process. Sensitivity allows you to see beyond what is happening and understand why it is happening. Increased sensitivity also brings a greater level of compassion and awareness of others. You may begin to notice people's struggles more deeply, feel a stronger burden to encourage or help them, or sense when someone is in need. God heightens your spiritual awareness not just for yourself, but so that you can be a vessel for others. When God increases your spiritual sensitivity, it is because He is preparing you for something greater. He does not want you to walk blindly into a new season. He sharpens your discernment, refines your heart, deepens your prayer life, and increases your awareness of His presence. The key is recognizing the shift and responding to it. Many people sense God moving but ignore it. They feel the pull toward deeper things but resist it out of fear or distraction. But those who lean in, who embrace what He is doing, step into alignment with His purpose. Usual opportunities are one of the clearest indicators that God is preparing you for a shift. These are not ordinary chances or routine events. They are moments that stand out, doors that open unexpectedly, and invitations that seem beyond your qualifications. When God is about to move you into a new season, He places opportunities in your path that align with His purpose for your life. These moments are not random. They are divinely orchestrated to position you for what is coming next. One of the most powerful examples of this is found in the life of David. He was a shepherd boy, unseen and overlooked, tending to his father's sheep. But one day an unusual opportunity presented itself. He was called to stand before the prophet Samuel and was anointed as king. At the time it did not seem to change much. He went back to the fields. But shortly after, another unexpected opportunity arose. King Saul needed someone to play the harp, and David was chosen. He found himself in the palace, not as a king, but as a servant. It may not have looked like a promotion, but it was positioning. God often introduces new opportunities in ways that do not seem grand at first. They may come as small assignments, unexpected invitations, or responsibilities that seem unrelated to your calling. But every opportunity serves a purpose. David's time in the palace was preparing him for kingship. He observed how a kingdom was run, learned leadership dynamics, and gained insight into what it meant to rule. If he had rejected that opportunity because it did not look like the throne, he would have missed the training ground for his destiny. When God is moving in your life, he will place you in rooms where your name was never mentioned before. He will bring you before people you never imagined meeting. He will open doors that you did not even knock on. These moments are not coincidences, they are divine setups. The challenge is recognizing them when they come. Many people miss their breakthrough because they overlook small opportunities. They are waiting for something big while ignoring the little steps that lead to greatness. Esther experienced an unusual opportunity when she was chosen to be part of the king's selection process. She was an orphan, an outsider, someone who had no natural connection to royalty. But the opportunity came and she stepped into it. At first it seemed like just a chance to live in the palace, but it was much more than that. It was positioning for purpose. When the time came for her to stand in the gap for her people, she was already in place. Had she dismissed the opportunity, she would have never been in the position to make a difference. One of the mistakes people make is assuming that every opportunity will come in a way that is comfortable or convenient. Sometimes opportunities will stretch you. They will require you to step into unfamiliar territory, to learn new skills, to operate in a space that feels beyond your ability. This is intentional. God does not give opportunities that match where you are. He gives opportunities that challenge you to grow into where He is taking you. Peter experienced this when Jesus called him to walk on water. It was an invitation to step into the supernatural, to move beyond the limits of the natural mind. But it required faith. Had Peter stayed in the boat, he would have never known what it felt like to defy the laws of nature. Many people stay in the boat of comfort and familiarity, missing out on the miraculous because they are afraid to step into something unknown. God's opportunities often come disguised as challenges. Goliath was not just an obstacle, he was David's opportunity to be recognized. The Red Sea was not just a barrier, it was Israel's opportunity to witness God's power. The prison was not just suffering for Joseph, it was his pathway to the palace. If you only focus on the difficulty, you will miss the opportunity hidden within it. Sometimes opportunities will come through unlikely people. Naaman, a commander in the Syrian army, was healed of leprosy because a servant girl told him about Elisha. She was someone who by worldly standards had no influence, yet she carried the key to his healing. Never dismiss where an opportunity comes from. It may come from someone unexpected, from a place you did not anticipate, or from a connection that seems insignificant. But God uses the foolish things to confound the wise. Recognizing an opportunity requires spiritual discernment. Not every open door is from God, but when He is moving, He will confirm His direction. He will provide peace in the midst of uncertainty. He will send people to affirm what He has already spoken to your heart. He will align circumstances in ways that cannot be explained naturally. When you sense an opportunity that seems to be God-ordained, step into it with faith. When God is about to elevate you, He does not always announce it with fanfare. He introduces opportunities that test your readiness, stretch your capacity, and prepare you for what is ahead. If you are in a season where unusual doors are opening, do not hesitate. Seek God's wisdom, but do not let fear hold you back. Many people pray for breakthrough, but reject the very opportunities that lead to it. Those who recognize and embrace God-given opportunities position themselves for His divine shift.